Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Metal Magdalene with Jet right here on Metal Messiah Radio. Tonight we have a very special guest with us. We have V.Santura, who plays guitars for a lot of different projects, as well as Dark Fortress and Triptykon, which he also does some vocals in. And he also runs Woodshed Studio in Germany, where he's worked with Obscura and Triptykon and Dark Fortress and so many more. Welcome to the show, Victor.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. And thanks for the very nice introduction, too.
And that's the abbreviated version.
Yeah, kind of. But everything was perfectly correct. So
we're going to talk a little bit about you first. So at what age did you start to take an interest in music? And was guitar the first instrument that you played, Victor?
Actually, yes. Guitar was the first instrument I played and pretty much the only instrument I ever played, even though somehow I've always been drawn towards drums, to be honest, and drums has always been like a big fascination of mine. But unfortunately, one of my best friends, Seraph, actually our drummer from Dark Fortress, he was already a drummer. So when we started making music, I took the guitar because, we needed a guitar player, not a drummer. But I mean, I never regretted it. And the great thing about playing guitar is that you can get creative very well with that instrument and just write music on it. And that has always been one of the most important parts for me, playing in a band that I can also write music.
So when did you start playing guitar then, Victor?
I started playing guitar with the age of 15, approximately. I mean, and somehow I wanted to start earlier, but I don't know why I didn't really start earlier. So it was pretty much with 15.
And do you remember your first guitar?
Oh, yeah. My first guitar was really a horrible guitar. It was a rip-off of a Fender Stratocaster from a brand called Cherry.
Oh.
And it was really a piece of shit, and I was playing on it for like about 2 years until I got my first proper guitar, which was a custom US-made BC Rich Warlock, and I'm actually still playing that guitar a lot, even though I'm not supposed to because I'm a full Ibanez endorser, and I love Ibanez guitars, but that one particular BC Rich, it's just, I grew up with this guitar, and it's like I learned walking on it, and it's just, I'm so used to it that I can't get rid of it.
It's like your little brother.
Yeah, it's just like my hands are like I learned playing guitar on this one, and it just feels so familiar that it's still one of the guitars that I play best on. So sometimes I still use it.
You've accomplished so much musically in your career. What were some of your first bands that you were in? That
I was in as a fan.
No, that you were in as a player.
That I was in as a player. Okay. Well, my first band that never released anything was called The Shroud. And I started that actually with Seraph and Draug, who then also joined Dark Fortress together with me. And it was more of a thrash metal band. We started in the late 90s, and I was really inspired by stuff like Slayer, Grip Inc., Testament, At the Gates, that kind of stuff. But we were doing this for 1 or 2 years and never got a proper lineup together, so the band fell apart, and it especially fell apart in that moment when the three of us basically joined Dark Fortress, so we were, taken over by Dark Fortress. And so my first real band, in fact, was Dark Fortress then.
Wow. Now, also, did you go to school for audio engineering?
Yes, I went to that SAE college. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's an international school. It has dependencies all over the world, and I was at that at Munich.
And now, did you start up Woodshed Studio?
Yes, that's my studio. It's also basically I rented a little house back in 2008, and I'm still having that. And just 2 rooms of this house are the studio, so it's my private studio, basically.
So for you, what's the best part of being an audio engineer?
I think the best part for me is mixing. That's the thing that I really love and that I enjoy. It's simply more fun than recording because you are active all the time. When you record a band, you have to be very concentrated on someone else. You are basically condemned to be inactive in a way, but you have to be highly focused all the time. Like as soon as you're getting tired, nothing is moving on. So it takes a lot of energy, and you need to make sure that you really sleep very well. for example, and producing records can be very exhausting, and that's why I honestly prefer mixing most, because then I can just work in my pace and you're always active. You hear something, you can instantly react to it, and yeah, it's fun. And of course, the biggest privilege of being able to do it by yourself is that you can actually make sure that your own music sounds the way you envision it when you write it. That was maybe also one of the main reasons why I started the thing.
And we're here today to actually talk about the new Dark Fortress album, Spectres from the Old World. So, Victor, what's it like for you to, first of all, write with the band, but then record, mix, and master the entire album? Do they ever get annoyed with you?
If my band gets annoyed with me, yeah, probably. I mean, this is something that is probably impossible to avoid over all the years, because in a way I have to tell, or I have to say, okay, no, we have to do it this way, and sometimes there are disagreements, and of course I'm not a dictator, but and we always try to agree on things, but when it comes down to it, then sometimes I just have to say, no, we have to do it, and then I'm the stubborn asshole. But apart from that, I think that I'm actually a nice guy.
I was going to say, that's a lot, and then you have to tell them, that doesn't sound quite right. I'm like, oh gosh, I could just imagine. But hey, it all comes out fine in the end. That's all that matters, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that we are really fighting. I think we are all grown-ups, and I think also one of the reasons why this band stayed stable for so many years is that we are friends, and that we can talk with each other, and that we can also have a disagreement and not letting it get personal. Like when I have a musical disagreement with our drummer, it stays on the musical side, and we are not fighting as friends, you know. Right. And so it works. So
tell everybody the current lineup of the band.
Okay, the current lineup is Morian on vocals, and he joined the band in 2008. Mm-hmm. And then on second guitar, it's Asvarga. He actually formed the band back in 1994. So it's me on the other guitar, and currently we don't really have a full-time bass player, because our actual bass player decided to leave the band about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So we're working with friends as sessionists. And we have a new keyboard player since a couple of years. His name is Phoenix. That's his stage name. He's also doing a lot of session work for other bands. For example, he's playing session keyboards in Triptykon, in Ruins of Beverast, also just to name a few. And then, of course, Seraph is on drums. But actually, on that new album, we have 2 drummers. That's something that most people don't really know. So half of the songs were recorded by Seraph, and the other half of the songs was recorded by Hannes Grossmann. Mm-hmm. Maybe you have heard of that guy. He also has a very good credit list, recorded that famous Necrophagist album already back then, and played with Obscura, and now is also the drummer of Triptykon. And it's, Seraph, he's very busy also as a drum tech. He's touring with Rival Sons from the United States, and they are his main, not employer. He's of course an freelancer, but he's on tour with them all the time. And so if Seraph cannot play drums with us, then Hannes was stepping in and helping out. And now with this new album, it kind of developed in a direction that our drummer and me were a little bit, wanting different things. Some of the music that I was writing, he was not really happy with, because he doesn't really like that kind of sportive aspect of drumming so much. So he was almost about to say, I don't want to record the album, but then we decided that he would record the songs that he can really identify himself with as a musician, and that for the other part of the songs that are more the faster songs, or the stuff with a lot of double bass, we would ask Hannes, because he's very close to us anyways, and he was just the perfect drummer for it. So it's a bit of an unusual decision, I think, but I think it turned out really great, and I'm really stoked about the drums on that record.
And who played bass on the album?
Well, actually on the album I played bass.
Oh, so you do both. Well, that's kind of cool, because listening to the album, I didn't know that Hannes was in there as well. But now that you mention it, it makes perfect sense, because I was like, this drumming is kind of weird. You know what I mean? Each drummer has their own style. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this drummer switches styles.
exactly. But they're good that you noticed. I mean, it's not really a secret. We just didn't like put it in the press release or anything. But they are both credited in the booklet accordingly. So whoever buys the physical record will see it. So it's not a record, so we can talk. So it's not a secret, so we can talk about it openly.
Right. So what were some of the biggest challenges for you in the studio as far as recording and mixing and mastering and all that has to be done with this album?
Well, this time it was actually not that horribly bad. With the previous album, Venereal Dawn, I drove myself a little bit crazy, I have to say. Like back then, the album also was supposed to come out a bit earlier. Like we were working on Venereal Dawn in 2013. And then I really had a lot of time pressure. I wanted to still mix that album, and right afterwards the production for the last Triptykon album started. Oh. And then it was too much pressure. I couldn't pull it off, so I gave up, and so I mixed the album half a year later, and it was still like, I don't know. Sometimes if you produce your own stuff, there is a danger that you get mental. Mm-hmm. But this time I think I avoided it. It also took me a bit longer to basically nail the basic sound of the album than I would need if I work for an external band or artist, because somehow sometimes it's like this when you do some work and you want to do it extra good. I mean, you just put a lot of pressure on yourself, because whenever I try to mix something, I try to make it sound as good as possible. Of course. But sometimes it's helpful if there is this last little piece of you that doesn't care, if you understand what you mean. And if you care too much, then you get like you start questioning your decisions a little bit too much, and that is that's the one danger. And it took me about like 3 days to get somewhere that I was happy with, but. No, I'm really satisfied, actually.
Well, I was going to say that would drive me nuts, because it's you're on that. I mean, it's your music. So, of course, you want it to be perfect. You'll listen to it all together, and you'll be like, okay, that's great. And then everybody leaves, and then you're still listening to it, and you're like, well, that could just be tweaked, I think, a little bit more, and I could see where that would drive you nuts, Victor.
Yeah, exactly. That's like, and sometimes then all of a sudden you start hearing things, and you are getting... Like you put your focus on one tiny detail that is actually not important, and all of a sudden that's the only thing that you hear and that bothers you, and you ask 10 other people, don't you think that the snare in that song is too loud? And everybody's like, no, didn't notice that. And the drummer says, no, I think the snare sounds fucking awesome. And I'm still like, yeah, I don't know. These kind of things that can happen. That happened to me with one particular song, to be honest. And I still, when I hear that mix now, I think, fuck, that snare is too loud. But nobody else complains, so I guess it's okay.
Well, don't tell us what the song is.
Okay, good. I won't.
Now, as the guitarist, do you use the same guitar to record the whole album, or do you switch between guitars?
Mainly I use the same guitar, to be honest, but there is one song that has a total different tuning. That's Isa. Mm-hmm. That's tuned lower than the other songs, and for this song I used a different guitar.
Now, do you contribute any vocals to this album?
One scream in the song Coalescence. Besides that, no. In the chorus there's one.
That's you.
And that's me. But for the rest, everything is Morian.
Do you enjoy singing?
Actually, yes. Mm-hmm. I actually enjoy singing in the studio. What I don't enjoy, to be honest, is singing and playing guitar at the same time. Because I would like to put my focus on either one of these two things.
Right.
And it's a bit exhausting. I mean, I do it with Triptykon because I have to. But I enjoy singing in the studio. That's fun. When you scream.
So for as far as Dark Fortress, right? The last album released some 6 or so years ago. How long did it?
6 years almost.
That's why I just figured or so, right?
Yeah.
So how long did it take to write Spectres from the Old World, and how did you approach this album musically? I mean, listening to it, there's like a lot going on, technicality, groove, almost some thrashy parts, and of course a black metal vibe. And now that you're telling me that there's 2 different drummers, that explains a lot too. But how did you approach this album musically?
Well, actually, I started writing most of the music already relatively soon after we did Venereal Dawn, and I basically wrote, let's say, 2/3 of the album in 2015. There I had a phase of a couple of months where I was really very inspired. I didn't have to force inspiration or anything. The songs just came naturally. And so by that time, like, let's say end of 2015, I had 6 or 7 songs ready.
Wow.
But the thing is, I was really inspired writing the music. I was simply not inspired to record it. As absurd as it sounds, but as you know, I'm working all the day in the studio, and then you've been working in the studio for 8 or 9 hours, and when I ask myself after a working day in the studio, okay, what do I want to do with my time now? It's not, okay, I want to record more music. I just want to do something else. I still enjoy playing guitar. And when I had ideas, I would just record some sketches on my smartphone and keep the rest in my head. And it took me almost 2 years to really sit down and record proper demos or pre-productions so that my bandmates could listen to those songs. And I think that was the time where we lost a lot of that's where we lost a lot of time along the road. Basically, our new keyboarder, Phoenix, at some point he forced me and said, okay, dude, I'm gonna book flights now, and we are meeting in your studio for 10 days or something. We're just recording all that stuff that you came up with, so that there is something happening with that Dark Fortress album finally. And I'm glad he kicked my ass, to be honest. And then, yeah, we recorded demos for 7 songs, realized that 1 out of those 7 songs is not good enough, so we had 6 songs. And that demo recording session that we did together, that was, again, very inspirational for me. So I wrote another 2 songs, and then there were still good ideas lying around from our other guitar player. So that was the last song that was written, and then the album was basically finished. So it were 2 phases of like big creativity where the album was written, and we lost a lot of time until we finally recorded and produced the album. And yeah, that's a bummer, but on the other hand, it's our 8th album. There's no pressure or no need to rush things. Nope. And I think it's
do you guys all live close by?
No, not really, not at all. That's the problem. I live in the south east of Germany, Bavaria. Like it's a small town called Landshut, and our second guitar player, he lives in the same town. So our drummer and our vocalist, they live in Netherlands, in Rotterdam. So that's if they want to travel here by car, it's a 10 or 12 hours drive, or they have to fly in. And our new keyboarder, he is originally Dutch too, but he moved to Norway. So he lives at the Norwegian west coast in Bergen because he got married with a Norwegian girl. So we only meet if we really have a reason to meet. Like we have a concert, so we meet before and rehearse. And for the rest, we can't just simply meet and rehearse on, let's say, okay, we rehearse every Friday night. No, that's not happening. So it makes things a bit more complicated. And also that especially our vocalist and our drummer are very, very busy also in the music business to some degree. Our vocalist is a classical composer. So he's very busy with that. Our drummer is a professional drummer and a professional drum tech, so he's also on the road a lot, so the time is a little bit limited that we are having for the band, which is a bummer, but it is as it is.
Now, are you the main songwriter?
Yeah, I write most of the music, but I don't write the lyrics, so the lyrics are all written by our vocalist, so we basically share the creative or the biggest chunk of the creative duties. Our other guitar player also sometimes writes good riffs or parts of a song, but on that album, basically, the first 10 titles on the album were written by me, and then Swan Song was basically written by Asvargre, and the last song, which is basically more like an outro, that was kind of written by all of us all together.
And now this is probably a question for the vocalist, but what are some of the basic themes present throughout the album?
Well, the basic themes I can tell you, even though I'm honestly not so super happy with talking about his lyrics because it's his work and I don't want to interpret his things. Right. Yeah, but main themes are in a way, well, he has this fascination for science. And there's one of the aspects is string theory, the string theory and cosmology. And it's also, but another aspect is that you could say that the nature itself is personified and is observing the universe, or also the behavior of humans on this planet. That is also one aspect, that basically the nature itself is a specter of what's going on here and commenting about it.
And just kind of going through the album a little bit, track 10, you have like an interlude then leading into Swan Song. So what kind of feeling were you going for with this interlude before Swan Song?
I mean, honestly, I always write an album with the big picture in mind. And especially this album, like the first 6 titles, they were really written chronologically. And we had In Deepest Time, which is the song before that, instrumental, and then there was Swan Song. And we knew, okay, Swan Song is kind of going to be on the final position of the album. And I simply had the feeling, if Swan Song comes directly after In Deepest Time, I didn't like the shift in atmosphere, and also just the change in keys. So I had the feeling there needs to be some kind of bridge, something that, is a bridge to Swan Song. And that's why I came up with this instrumental, Penrose Procession.
Now, are you also the one who determines what songs go in what order on the album? I mean, how much of a process is that?
Yeah, I determine that, and that's because I always, like from the start, I try to have the great picture of the album in mind, and I put a lot of effort into that. It's not just that we are writing songs and then we put them on, and then we look, how are we gonna put them together on the album? It's really, I had the first song written and I knew, okay, it ends like this. So which kind of groove, which kind of vibe should the next song have? What would I like to hear? And then I try to write a song that is like that. And then the next song is over, and again I ask myself, okay, which kind of contrast do I want to create now? What should come next to keep a very good natural flow to the album, but also have big contrasts so it doesn't get boring. So yeah, there's a lot of effort being put into that, and then you can't just change the song order, because it would rip the whole musical line apart.
Do you get it right on the first time, or do you have to shuffle them around every now and then?
Actually, more or less not the latter. Like I try to get them the first time right. I mean, depends. With this album, it was really like the first 6 songs were written chronologically, so that was really given. Only then was the problem that the next song I've been writing wasn't good enough. So I had Pasusu, then I had a shit song, and then I had In Deepest Time, and it was like, okay, fuck, so we need to do something about that. So I wrote Isa, and then Pulling at Threads, and then I was lucky that In Deepest Time would fit very well after Pulling at Threads.
So how would you say that Dark Fortress has progressed as a band over the years, and how have you progressed as a musician yourself over the years?
But as a band, I think Dark Fortress did their debut album, Tales from Eternal Dusk, in 2001, and then there was this big change in lineup, where basically our drummer and me and our bass player joined the band. So there was a big change in the band. Then we had the second album, Profane Genocidal Creations, which I don't really like, because it was an album where we tried to figure out who we actually are and how we can work best.
Right.
So it's, in a way, to a certain degree, I see it as a failed experiment. And then with our third album, Step Wounds, I think we found our way of working. And I think with this album, we kind of found our style and defined our style. And since then, the progression was more like in small steps and a very natural progression. But we always try to have, let's say, very aggressive moments, very atmospheric moments, and a certain kind of melancholy in our music. And these 3 aspects are on every album. It's just a different weight on one of these aspects in every album. And it's also, I think, probably got a little bit more progressive over the time, but not for the sake of being progressive, because I still also like to have really straight and primitive necro elements in our sound. And I also think with Ilum and Venereal Dawn, we really got more progressive, but with Spectres from the Old World, I think we went a step back and got a bit more aggressive and straight again.
And what about yourself? How would you say you have progressed as a musician over the years?
I think my understanding for music got better. I don't know if I got so much better technically. I think the biggest progress I made as a player was between when I was 17, 18, 19 years old. At least I always keep playing in a way that I don't get worse. But I don't really know if I'm getting like better technically or not that much. But my ears, of course, getting better. And I think... especially with the new album, I would say about myself that I learned a few more tricks about songwriting, and that I think that I'm a better songwriter now than I was a few years before. Also, I mean, I still, of course, like Venereal Dawn a lot, but with Spectres, I really tried to achieve that I would be able to write songs that are shorter and coming faster to the point while still having all the content, while still having the emotional content and the bigness, but not wasting so much time.
Well, the listeners like that, especially on radio.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, I know we're living in a time where people we're talking about the ADHS generation, and people have less patience. And probably that even counts for myself too, that I'm getting a little bit less patient as a music listener. And that's why, maybe that's also a reason why I tried to write shorter songs than we did on the two previous albums. But it was not like to appeal to the masses. I don't want to create a product when I'm writing music. Right. I want to create music.
So what makes you less patient in listening to music, Victor?
Yeah, maybe because I have to listen to music every day for 8 or 9 hours. I think that is the main reason, and it's just as it is. Yeah, I'm not getting that easily excited anymore as when I was 17 years old, but I think that is just a completely normal development with almost every human being.
Well, I could understand that, because back when we were 17 and 18, there was nowhere near as much music as there is now. Now it's so oversaturated, and probably everybody's sending you stuff. Listen to this, listen to this, listen to this. That as much as you want to be excited for everybody, it's like overwhelming almost. You know,
it's impossible. I mean, if I look at the typical metal magazines that we still have in Germany, and you see they have 60 or 80 albums in the sound check every month. Like, I wonder, how do the journalists do that? Because every journalist has to give a grade, a note, and say like, okay, I give this album 7 out of 10 points. Like, almost every album has 7 out of or 8 out of 10. Like, how the hell do you listen to 80 albums every month? How can you process that? It's impossible.
I can't imagine. They would all start to sound the same, and they would just... And unfortunately, with today's music...
They all sound the same.
Yes! Right, Victor. I don't know, how am I going to say this without offending anybody? But a lot of it just sounds the same. It's really, really hard to find that diamond in the rough. But... Yeah.
Unfortunately, I totally agree. I was just in Finland with some friends, and in Finland there's like a rock and a metal radio station just on normal radio. We were driving in the car for a while, and we were listening to that rock and metal station for like 30 or 45 minutes. And at some point I got so angry, said like, man, all that stuff, it all sounds like a product. It's all kind of streamlined. Everybody has the same fucking drum sound. Oh, sorry, I can't say that on the radio.
Yes,
I guess.
You can. This is internet. There's no regulation.
No, everybody has like, seems to have the same drum sounds. Everybody is following a very similar recipe. And to me, it's all being created just to appeal to as many people as possible and as fast as possible. To me, it feels like, okay, McDonald's are releasing a new burger. It's basically cardboard, but they spice it up with a lot of mayonnaise and artificial stuff and salt, and you bite into it and you think like, yeah, it tastes awesome, but it's not really good food after all. And I feel a little bit about that with a lot of music that is coming out. And when I also hear record labels talking, they always talk about a product. When they talk about a new album, like, it's not a fucking product. It should be art.
Right.
And that makes everything so similar, and so few things really stand out, in my opinion.
Well, it's true. It's the truth. It's just the way the music industry is. There is so much out there, and a lot of people are just copying other people because they see it works for that person, so why wouldn't it work for me, instead of just being their own creative thing. And yeah, I agree with you, and it's got to be pretty sucky driving in a car listening to the radio when you can't wait for a commercial to come on.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I mean, I always think that the really biggest things that also last over the years have always been things where somebody creates something new.
Right.
And these are the things that are being copied then. But yeah, I don't think that, I don't know, Led Zeppelin copied a lot of other bands and were just following a formula. They created just music that they thought was good, and that's how it should be done, I think.
Do you have a favorite song off the album?
No, I have a couple of favorite songs.
Which ones?
First of all, the opening tracks. For me, Nascence and Coalescence are one song, by the way. We just split it because I thought it would be better to have the first part of that song as a dedicated intro. But that song was kind of where the whole album started for me. That was the first song I was writing, and it had this super dark and icy and cold atmosphere. And that really... I don't know, I wrote that in a very short time, and I was totally high on adrenaline when I wrote that. And it was very inspiring for me. And then I think my favorite songs might be... more the B side of the album. Isa and Pulling at Threads and In Deepest Time are probably my favorite songs.
I was going to say, well, like you were saying, that first song definitely sets the tone for the album right off the bat. And I love Isa too, you know. Just something about the atmosphere of that song, as well as A Spider in the Web. Just something about the atmosphere of both of those songs I like. But the whole album is great. It's really hard to pick favorite songs off of it.
Thank you for saying that. The thing is also, there are some songs, for example, the title track, Spectres from the Old World. It's a total song that should only be looked at in the album context.
Right.
Because it works best, it shines best in the album context. It's if you see that song as a standalone riff, I would actually admit that opening riff is not super special or brilliant, but it's just bursting in after that slow, dark riff in Spider in the Web. All of a sudden, that blast beat riff comes in, and it's this harsh contrast. And in that album context, I really love it. But as a standalone song, it's maybe not our best song.
Right.
And that's how some of these songs in the album work. Some of these songs you can really just pick out, and they're really great as standalone songs. Other songs are really, album songs.
Right. Well, there's every song you could hear, you could find something you like in all of them individually, I think, you know. So tell us a little bit about the cover art, the album cover art, and the artist.
Okay, the artist is our vocalist, Marian. He took the picture. Basically, all the pictures that are also featured in the booklet are taken by him. Okay. So he did a lot of traveling to very remote places in the world. And when I saw some of these pictures that he made, I was so blown away, and I could totally connect the feeling of the music to those pictures. So this is where we got the idea that we should just take his pictures from Antarctica or some ice cave in Iceland. I think the cover is an ice cave in Iceland, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, cool.
Could also be Greenland, because he's also been there. And a lot of I think in early 2015 he made a very, very long trip, like 3 months, through Chile.
Wow.
And traveled from the whole country from north to the very south, and then even took a ship and went to the coasts of Antarctica.
Wow.
And so there is a lot of amazing photo material that also looks like it was taken on a different planet. And it has this very, very raw and powerful vibe, and you don't see any kind of sign of civilization, and that's what we really liked about it.
So when you're out playing live with Dark Fortress, what gear do you use? This is for our gearheads out there. What kind of setup do you have going on?
Well, our drummer, or our drummers, and they both play Tama drums, of course, because they are endorsed, and I think they have both Star Classic drum sets and Meinl cymbals. For myself, live, I'm using an XFX from Fractal Audio because I like it. It's quite easy to use, and I have a lot of effect sounds and a lot of delays that are timed to the speed of the song, and to achieve that with an analog setup would be very difficult. So that's what I'm using. Even though in the studio I've been using an Engel Fireball amp with Engel cabinets. So that was a very straight and simple analog setup. But live, it's the XFX. And yeah, our other guitar player, he's still using some old pedal board from Boss, which I actually don't like that much. And I hope we can get some other gear for the future live shows, because I'm not super happy with his guitar sound. And I would also prefer if he could just, if I could get him some Engel amp, because I'm really digging Engel amps, to be honest.
And if people want to learn more about the band, keep up with you, see what's going on, where you're going, where they could pick up merch, what are some of the best websites that they could go to for that?
Probably just our Facebook site or our Instagram. We also still have an official website, but we are, to be honest, how it is, the way it is with real websites nowadays, we are a bit lazy in maintaining it, so sometimes it's not really up to date, even though at the moment it is almost up to date, and there's also a link to our web shop. But to be honest, we will probably take our web shop offline by the time the interview is being released, because it's very difficult and very stressy to handle it, and we really wanted to have the possibility for people to pre-order our albums, but I think we will take it offline by the end of March.
So they could just go over to the Facebook page and they could find all the links to everything they could possibly want there.
When it comes to merch, I don't know.
And Century Media too, right? Do you guys do your own merch, or do you just do it through...
No, we actually do our own merch, and you can... we are cooperating with Ratzamatats from the UK. So you could also order it there. And, well, I think when we go over to the United States, then we will definitely produce some merchandise also in the US.
All right, well, there you guys have it. Dark Fortress has a new album out called Spectres from the Old World on Century Media Records. And you can learn more about what they have coming up on their websites. And Victor, thank you for coming on the show to talk a little bit about yourself and the band. And we wish you and the band all the best.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking with you.